will it take to ensure speedy justice for Shraddha? We'll have more criminal lawyers and police officers joining us on the show tonight. Also, Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Raut will be joining me as the Savarkar issue divides politicians in Maharashtra. And we'll tell you why Amazon is laying off thousands of employees. All that and more, but first, the 9 headlines at 9 tonight. The centre moves the Supreme Court against the release of Rajiv Gandhi's convict, seeks a review of remission, says top court order in the case is legally flawed. Alleged killer Aftab burned Shraddha's face to hide her identity, drank beer, smoked while dismembering her, ordered food, watched Netflix after cutting her into pieces. Those are the details emerging as the police custody is extended by 5 days in the murder most foul. Rahul Gandhi on the Bharat Jodo Yatra in Maharashtra attacks Savarkar's vision for India, says the Hindu ideologue was afraid of the British. Shiv Sena distances itself from the Congress leader's remarks. Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren appears before the Enforcement Directorate in connection with an illegal mining case. The JMM's chief slams the ED action, calls it vindictive. His party stages a protest. No relief for Delhi Minister Satyendra Jain in a money laundering case. Delhi court rejects Jain and 2 co-accused plea for bail. Morbi civic body owns up to lapses which led to fatal bridge collapse last month. This as civic body submits affidavit in a suo moto case hearing on the collapse of the bridge. Varanasi court to hear a plea seeking worship of Shivling in Gyanvapi Mosque complex on the 2nd of December. Dismisses the Muslim side's plea seeking to challenge the maintainability of the suit. UK's finance minister announces tax hikes and spending cuts, says the country is in recession. British economy expected to contract by 1.4% in 2023. Growth expected now only in 2024. And India and New Zealand face off in the first of the 3 T20s tomorrow as India starts a new journey to restore pride after its debacle in the T20 World Cup semi-finals. But let's start at the very top with the breaking news that's just coming in. The centre has moved the Supreme Court now against the release of Rajiv Gandhi's convicts. The centre has sought a review of the order that granted remission to the 6 convicts in the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case. The centre says the Supreme Court order in the case is legally flawed. The centre is now seeking permission from the court to argue against the release of the convicts. So, another twist, the centre which stayed silent so far, even as the Supreme Court had granted remission in sentence to Rajiv Gandhi's killers, has now said they will challenge the order. What explains the sudden decision of the centre after their silence? Remember, the matter was also before the Tamil Nadu governor and he too had chosen not to act on it. Then the Supreme Court moved in and granted remission, which was celebrated in Tamil Nadu by the ruling DMK. Officially, the Congress had opposed it. The BJP, as I said, or the government at least, had stayed silent on the issue until now. So, our legal head, Nalini Sharma, joins us with the very latest. Nalini, what exactly is the centre planning to do, and will it come as early as tomorrow that they will challenge this order now?
Well, Rajdeep, there's a review petition that has now been filed by the centre before the Supreme Court, and there are 2 main grounds on the basis of which they are asking for this order to be reviewed. One, they say that throughout this entire process where the decision for remission of these 6 convicts was taken, the centre wasn't asked even once about what their stand on this entire issue is. In fact, none of the convicts who had actually moved Supreme Court had even made centre a party to these proceedings. So what the central government is saying is that it's a necessary party and that there's been a miscarriage of justice because of these procedural lapses, because centre was not asked for their opinion. The second and the more important thing that they're saying is that out of these 6 convicts who've been granted remission, 4 are actually Sri Lankan nationals. So for the Supreme Court to grant remission to a foreign terrorist who had come on Indian soil and committed a crime no less than assassinating the Prime Minister of the country, what kind of a message does this send out internationally? So what they're saying is that this is a decision that can be taken only by the Union of India And if the Union of India is given a chance to put forth its arguments before the Supreme Court, they'll show the Supreme Court how this is not similar to the earlier judgment in the Supreme Court, the AG Paradivalan judgment, on the basis of which the remission was granted to these 6 convicts. So it's a review petition that's now been filed. It will first come up in the chambers where the Supreme Court will decide whether or not to even take it up for open hearing. So maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in the course of the next week, coming week, we can expect for the Supreme Court to at least take it up in its chambers and decide whether or not there will be an open court hearing where the centre will be allowed to place its arguments against the release of these 6 convicts.
What I just want to know though, Nalini, until now the centre was unusually silent on the case. The Congress officially had opposed the release, even though the Gandhi family themselves had said they were ready to grant a pardon, or so they claimed at least. And the DMK government in Tamil Nadu had welcomed this. So I just want to understand, the Tamil Nadu government had sat on this, governor had sat on this issue, and the centre also in the Supreme Court, I don't think made any intervention, neither the Solicitor or Attorney General. So what has suddenly changed?
Well, that is precisely their point, Rajdeep, the fact that they were not party to these proceedings in the Supreme Court. So their defense to it is that they were not made party to these proceedings either by the Supreme Court bench that was hearing the case or by the convicts who had initially approached the Supreme Court. The fact that they could have approached the Supreme Court on their own saying that they should be impleaded is set aside right now because they've now defended that in the form of this review petition that has now been filed in the Supreme Court. But what they are saying is that if they had been made party to the proceedings, then they would have put forth arguments showing how the case of these 6 convicts is not similar to the AG Paradivalan case and how they should not be granted remission on the grounds that he was granted remission on. What they're also saying is that because of the fact that 4 of these convicts are foreign nationals, or Sri Lankan nationals, this case cannot be judged on the same parameters as the earlier case was done. And now they're seeking permission to put forth these arguments before the Supreme Court after the decision has already come in. So their ground for challenging this is that there is an error apparent on the face of record because of which this judgment is legally flawed and it seeks to be reviewed. But as to whether or not that will be granted by the Supreme Court is something that we have to wait and watch out for.
Okay, Nalini Sharma, with lots of details there, interesting twist there in the Rajiv Gandhi assassination case. Let's turn from there to the other breaking news that's coming in. Union Minister Kaushal Kishore has stirred a row. Kishore, in the context of the Aaftab Shraddha cases, said girls should not opt for live-in relationships. Here is a minister saying live-in with partners after getting parents' consent. Get married instead of opting for a live-in. Kishore says educated women should learn from uneducated girls and listen to their parents. Kishore has sought a ban now on live-in relationships. So listen in to the minister, who are virtually blaming Shraddha, it seems, for what happened.
ज़्यादातर पढ़ी लिखी लड़कियां लिव इन रिलेशनशिप में जा रही हैं। उनको इस बात से सीख लेनी चाहिए, श्रद्धा हो या किसी और हो, उनकी इन घटनाओं से उनको सीख लेनी चाहिए हमको। और अपने माँ बाप जो होंगे, जो पाल पोस कर बड़ा करते हैं, उनकी मर्जी से ही किसी के साथ रहना चाहिए। अपराध को बढ़ावा देते हैं और मैं समझ रहा हूँ कि इस पर रोक लगनी चाहिए।
The minister saying live-in relationship should be banned. Now, all of this comes at a time when the Shraddha Walkar murder case keeps getting murkier. Here are the top developments in the case so far. The Delhi police has got alleged murderer Aaftab's extended custody for 5 more days. The police want at least 1 more week's custody, it says, to complete the investigations, gather all possible evidence. A local court, meanwhile, has allowed a narco-analysis test for lie detection on Aaftab Poonawala, the 28-year-old accused of killing his live-in partner Shraddha, chopping her body allegedly 6 months ago. The police wants a narco for Aaftab as he's continuously changing his statements. As more details tumble out, Aaftab has now allegedly confessed to the Delhi police that he not only butchered but also burnt Shraddha's face in an attempt to conceal her identity. Meanwhile, a forensic team of the Delhi police has taken Aaftab to the flat where he allegedly strangled Shraddha. Head of the forensic team says they've found traces of Shraddha's blood in the flat's kitchen, also found bones inside the drain. Meanwhile, sources have told India Today that Aaftab had a pending water bill of 300 rupees, which is unusual as Delhi gives 20,000 litres of free water every month. Aaftab's water bill suggests that a huge amount of water was used, but for what? This is what the police wants to find out. Now, as these horrific details emerge, the fact is, what next? Aaftab has reportedly confessed to burning Shraddha's face to conceal her identity. Investigators say Aaftab butchered Shraddha and this took place over nearly 10 hours. What else really does the police have? Arvind Oja with our top story.
Butchered into 35 pieces. Her face burnt to conceal identity. Her body kept in shower to soften. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Shraddha murder revelations get more gruesome and murkier. Aaftab has reportedly admitted that it took 10 hours to chop Shraddha's body into 35 pieces. In between sawing the body, Aaftab took breaks, drinking beer, smoking cigarettes. Once the job of cutting Shraddha into pieces was complete, Aaftab ordered food from an online platform. He then ate the food while watching Netflix. Inside scoop accessed by India Today revealed that Aaftab strangled Shraddha on the bed before chopping her into pieces. To hide her identity, Aaftab then burned Shraddha's face before disposing her severed head off. When asked where, Aaftab either remains tight-lipped or gives misleading answers. During combing Aaftab's horror house, cops found bloodstains only in the kitchen on one of the lower shelves where the gas cylinder was kept. Aaftab allegedly used chemicals and bleach to destroy blood traces from the murder spot and fridge where he stored dismembered body parts. Aaftab also allegedly bought a vacuum cleaner to clean the house after the murder. Cops are also looking at the mystery of Aaftab spending water bill of rupees 300. While residents get 20,000 litres of water free and get no due in bills, the excessive water use points to Aaftab using large quantity of water to soften the body before cutting it and washing the house. Delhi cops are also doing DNA tests on a severed head they found in East Delhi in June to ascertain if it is Shraddha's missing skull. Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's raise the big questions then at the very top. Is Aaftab's case an open and shut one? How can the police plug any possible loopholes? What will it take to ensure speedy justice and justice for Shraddha? That's what we're asking. Shashi Kant, former DGP Punjab, joining me. Ujjwal Nikam, one of Mumbai's leading criminal lawyers, is with us. Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate at the Supreme Court, with us. Let's go one by one to each of you. Ujjwal Nikam, your sense, you've dealt with a number of high-profile cases. Do you believe this is an open and shut case? Will a confession from Aaftab be enough in your view, or will the police have to go beyond the alleged circumstantial evidence they have?
Rajdeep, let me tell you very frankly that any confession before the police that is not admissible in law. So whatever the police are claiming that he has confessed before us, it has no legal value at all, number one. Number two, it is very apparent that this case completely rests on the circumstantial evidence, and therefore the police will require to collect the chain of the circumstances connecting the accused with the crime. Thirdly, in circumstantial evidence, the motive is very important. So police will require to find out what was the motive behind the killing of Shraddha. Number four, since the police have recovered certain parts of the human body at the instance of Aaftab, and if police found that certain part found in his freeze that match with the DNA of that body, particular part, then perhaps this is a conclusive evidence. Number six, the other important part of the evidence about the DNA extract. Now, it will be important for the police to collect the sampling of the DNA. Because in most of the cases when I have conducted based on the circumstantial evidence, I found that the police always commit mistakes in collecting the samples of the DNA from the body parts. So police will require to take utmost care in preserving the sample to send it to the laboratory. And lastly, I would say, when the case rests on the circumstantial evidence, I always say that it is more important than an eyewitness case. Because human being may be motivated, but circumstances do not. Circumstances are always contemporary in nature with the incident in question. Therefore, because I have conducted a number of the cases based on the circumstantial evidence in the trial, and I have found that the circumstantial evidence, if chain is connected, it is more conclusive than eyewitness account.
So
But ultimately, it all will depend upon the professional skill of the investigators.
Let me just take what you said. You're giving us very interesting points, and you're saying that you need to really connect the dots. It's not enough to just have a confession. You're going to have to connect all the dots and therefore build a solid case. Shashikant ji, you know, this case is at the moment taking place in the public gaze. And every day we are getting leaks from the police that Aaftab chopped the body into 35 parts. Aaftab was watching Netflix after he chopped the body. He allowed the shower to go to allow the blood to move on. The fact though is at the moment, the worry is of course that Aaftab could in court with his lawyer's help just claim that he never said any of all of this. As Ujjwal Nikam is saying, a confession is not enough. Is the worry that you've got to first build a foolproof case rather than doing selective leaks?
Yeah, I agree there. Mr. Nikam rightly said that somehow the other, whatever, a statement given to or told to the police is not admissible in the court. Even if they write his statement, 161 or whatever it is, that is also not admissible in the court. That is a tough part. And now what we are seeing every day is the kind of grandstanding by the police. More of, if it attracts more and more of public hype, I think in view of public hype, the work of the police always gets more and more difficult. Because they are saying one thing, here I don't know. Nobody knows whether he did it all by himself or he had an accomplice. Supposedly he had an accomplice. Whatever is coming in the media, maybe he can destroy those evidence. Police investigation has to be done very, very confidentially, and only selected information needs to be given out. But in this case, everybody is jumping in, all sorts of news is floating all over, which I think is making the work of the investigators all the more difficult because they have nothing but circumstantial evidence as on date. There's no hard evidence. They have not been able to take out anything from the dump data. They have not been able to take out anything. No witnesses, nothing. Whatever they say, they've taken the thing from the butcher or something. And he also says, hey, I'd seen him for 6 months before. I don't really remember who the hell he is. So things are becoming all and more difficult. Even the possible, probable witnesses, they'll also get nervous about it. Because you know how the things go out in the court because it sometimes drags for years and years together. That's going to be a difficult thing. I'll suggest the police to do the work carefully and keeping the confidentiality thereof very intact. Thank you.
You're making an important point again about the need for the police to maintain confidentiality of the investigation. Sanjay Hegde, DNA, does that become critical? We are putting up the missing links. Once it is confirmed that the DNA or whatever is found by the police or where Aaftab takes the police, where he allegedly dumped the body, does that in a way become the critical piece? Otherwise, he can easily resile on some of the so-called confessions that he makes under, he will claim under police duress. You need the DNA matching.
Absolutely. Whatever he's told the police is of no use, as Ujjwal has already told you. They are not admissible in any court. What the police have to basically do is first establish the corpus delicti, that there has indeed been a crime committed. How do you do that? You find they are right now searching for blood stains. They are searching for pieces of flesh. If the DNA there matches that of Shraddha, and that you would have to establish the chain through Shraddha's parents who are currently alive. So that once you say that what has been recovered are human remains, those human remains pertain to Shraddha, then a certain portion of the police job is done. You would then have to also tie in that Shraddha was in fact with Aaftab. She was last seen together. There would be a forensic evidence of electronic forensic evidence that their phones were in close proximity, that they came here together. And that's how an entire case built on circumstantial evidence, a chain of circumstantial evidence which inevitably points to the guilt of the accused and admits of no other conclusion. That's the kind of case that has to be built. Even if one of those links in the chain breaks, if the defense is successful, then at the trial, it may not end in the conviction.
You know, we've seen Ujjwal Nikam in a number of high-profile cases that it starts with a lot of belief that the case will lead to a swift prosecution, and yet the case drags on. Is that a concern you believe in such cases? I can go back to, and I referred to this last night as well, the Tandoor case of Sushil Sharma. We've referred to other cases in Mumbai, Neeraj Grover, a TV executive who was also killed in a similar fashion. And in most instances, the accused gets life, and in some instances, eventually is also bailed out. What's your sense in a case like this? Will the police really have to work extra hard to ensure, since the murder allegedly happened in May, we are in November, does that make the police's task more difficult?
Rajdeep, of course, police will require to work very hardly, not only very hardly, but they will require to collect the minute evidence, like Aaftab has used various chemicals. So they will require to find out the people from whom Aaftab had purchased the chemical. They will require to hold the test identification parade of Aaftab from such shopkeepers. Thirdly, then the burden shifts on the Aaftab for what purpose he had purchased the chemicals. It is for Aaftab to show. See, in law, at some times, the burden, at some time in very rare cases, the burden shifts on the accused, because the particular fact within the exceptional knowledge of the accused. Now, if police will successfully point out that the dead remains, that the body parts of Shraddha had found at the instance of accused Aaftab, and some body parts were found in the freeze, and if they will connect the chain, then it is for Aaftab to establish as to how he killed Shraddha. Therefore, I agree with Sanjay
Even in the absence,
missing link in the chain of the circumstances,
so even in the absence,
will get the benefit.
Even in the absence of the murder weapon, will it be for the police to prove beyond reasonable doubt, or for Aaftab to be able to refute the police's version of events?
Rajdeep, the murder weapon is not necessary. What I earlier said, the corpus delicti is not must in the cases of the circumstantial evidence. Without the corpus delicti, without the dead body, we can point out and establish by conclusive proof that the accused has committed the crime and is responsible for the crime. Therefore, murder weapon, it hardly makes any difference. Because suppose if accused throws the murder weapon in a river, how police will get into the murder weapon? So it is not necessary that recovery of murder weapon is a must in each and every crime.
You're saying that, but you know, the worry is, of course, that you could have someone who's a psychotic killer who also is a psychotic liar. He said that he had stored these body parts in the fridge. As of now, those body parts have not been found, Shashikantji, which is why the police is now taking him to various places to try and find those body parts. The head, the so-called skull location is important. Is that important that eventually Aaftab will have to be broken down to ensure that he is able, his story matches the evidence available?
Yes, sir. I'll just make a couple of additional points here. We've got illustrious lawyers and experts here. In murder case, the first most important thing is mens rea. How does police think that Aaftab had a definite plan, detailed, chalked out in all details to murder? How they'll prove it? That's the first thing. Second thing is actus reus, that means the actual act. How they will prove that actual act is there, that he actually had killed him. These are the major ingredients. And what we are finding, like I've said, and my illustrious friend has also said, that yes, circumstantial. But the most important, no case will succeed till such time there is a mens rea, there is actus reus, and there is a definite proof, not circumstantial, but a solid evidence to link up all these things. Otherwise, the case, I doubt whether it's going to succeed. Thank you.
You know, both of you are, in a way, indicating the difficulties that will lie ahead. Sanjay Hegde, from your experience, therefore, are we not saying this is an open and shut case at this stage? Are we saying that it's going to require a lot of police hard work to piece together the entire events that led up to the murder?
Absolutely. The police always has to do a lot of homework. And there is no open and shut case in law. Ultimately, it will depend on what the witnesses say in court, what is the strength of the circumstances that can be proved in court. In fact, since Ujjwal is here on this, I remember that in the case of Ajmal Kasab, where all of us saw it on TV, despite that, the charge sheet also had a charge that the man entered into Victoria Terminus station without buying a ticket. So it was a compendious charge sheet. So that if for any obscure reason you couldn't get him on one count, you would still get him on another count. So at the end of the day, there is no shortcut to investigation. There has to be a thorough investigation.
Yes.
The investigation should be relevant and it should be established in accordance with the Evidence Act and the Criminal Procedure Code beyond all reasonable doubt in a duly constituted court.
One final point, Ujjwal Nikam, narco test apparently will be done, which is not admissible as evidence. Do you believe, therefore, it is an important element? Why, how will that help the case? Apparently, Aaftab has agreed to a narco test.
Rajdeep, normally, narco test being conducted by the investigating agency just to get some more clues in the investigation. And secondly, just to verify whether the revelation given by the accused is correct or not, or he is giving the misdirection. But I have come across such accused person who did not actually bother about the narco test. They have given the certain evasive answer, though we had a concrete evidence that the accused has committed a crime. They are the very hardened criminal. So narco test has no legal basis. It is not admissible in evidence for certain reasons. But narco test normally police take just to get it confirmed. But the accused always said, yes, I am ready for narco test. In order to do that, I was to the people at large that I am innocent and therefore I am ready to a narco test. That is the regular strategy.
Right. Okay. Let's leave it there. We've heard various views.
On the narco.
Yes, very quickly. Yes, Sanjay.
Very quickly. If Aaftab had said, no, I won't undergo a narco, he was well within his rights.
Yes.
The narco is more for the police to show that we have done everything.
Okay. Let's leave it there. This case, as I said, has sort of engrossed the nation in a way because of the circumstances that allegedly were in which Shraddha was killed, the bestial manner in which she was killed, and therefore the sheer horror of it means that we need a swift and sure punishment. But as all my panelists are saying, the police investigation will have to be step by step to piece together all the elements. I appreciate my guests joining me on the show tonight on that big talking point. From there, let's turn to today's big political story, where Rahul Gandhi on his Bharat Jodo Yatra has sparked a bit of a political controversy in Maharashtra. The Congress MP, in an interaction with the media, reiterated that Hindutva ideologue Veer Savarkar sought mercy from the British and that his vision was against that of the country. His remarks have upset not just the BJP, but also his ally Shiv Sena, which today was celebrating was marking the 10th anniversary, death anniversary of their founder Bal Thackeray.
सावरकर की जी की चिट्ठी दिखाई, एक वो इमेजिनेशन है, गांधी जी की बात की वो दूसरा इमेजिनेशन है. तो ये देश में इन दो इमेजिनेशंस की लड़ाई है.
Congress MP Rahul Gandhi is in the eye of the storm for his remarks on B.D. Savarkar. During the Congress party's Grand Bharat Jodo Yatra, Rahul Gandhi criticized B.D. Savarkar's Hindutva ideology. During his address in Maharashtra's Akola, the Congress MP said there is a fight between the visions of Savarkar and Mahatma Gandhi. He further went on to say that Congress party is open to discussion and that they have no dictators. Showing a copy of Savarkar's letter seeking mercy, Rahul added that Savarkar was afraid of the British. Rahul also dared the Maharashtra government to stop the party's Bharat Jodo Yatra in Maharashtra.
मेरी थिंकिंग है कि जब सावरकर जी ने इस कागज पे साइन किया, उसका कारण क्या था? उसका कारण डर था. अगर वो डरते नहीं, वो इसको कभी नहीं साइन करते. और इस सिग्नेचर में धोखा था.
Rahul's statement, as expected, set the cat among the pigeons. Ranjit Savarkar, the grandson of B.D. Savarkar, has decided to lodge a formal complaint against Gandhi.
इनको लगता है मैंने जो बोला वो इतिहास बन गया, इसी गलतफहमी से वो आए, मगर महाराष्ट्र में ये गलतफहमी नहीं चलेगी और सरकार इसके ऊपर पूरा मतलब अभी हमने पुलिस स्टेशन में कंप्लेंट की है, तो इसकी तहकीकात करेंगे और पूरा इसका न्याय होगा और इनके ऊपर कार्रवाई होगी।
BJP slammed Rahul Gandhi for shamelessly lying about the freedom fighter, staging protest against Congress across Maharashtra.
जिस प्रकार की भाषा का प्रयोग राहुल गांधी जी ने अपने भारत जोड़ो यात्रा में वीर सावरकर जी के लिए महाराष्ट्र में प्रयोग किए हैं, वो बहुत ही अशोभनीय है, अक्षम्य है ये।
And even Rahul's ally in Maharashtra, former CM Uddhav Thackeray, made it clear he did not approve of the comments on Savarkar.
हे राहुल गांधी बोलले त्याच्याशी आम्ही सहमत नाही। स्वातंत्र्यवीर सावरकरांबद्दल आमच्या मनात अतीव आदर आणि प्रेम निष्ठा आहेतच।
Interestingly, Rahul's criticism of Savarkar comes at a time when the Uddhav faction has backed a growing chorus for the Modi government to honor the freedom fighter with the Bharat Ratna.
वीर सावरकर हमारे आदर्श है, हमारी श्रद्धा है उनके ऊपर। तो राहुल गांधी जी की जो टिप्पणी है सावरकर के बारे में, हम उससे सहमत नहीं है।
The Savarkar showdown is back in the news, and while Congress has repeatedly criticized Savarkar, Rahul now faces tough questions about his own ally backing the freedom fighter. Bureau Report, India Today.
So how will this play out in Maharashtra? Joining me now is the Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Raut. Mr. Raut, appreciate your joining us. राहुल गांधी ने जो कहा है वो वीर सावरकर को देशभक्त नहीं मानते हैं, कहते हैं सावरकर ने अपने घुटने टेक दिए ब्रिटिशर्स के सामने। किस तरह से आप देखते हैं, क्योंकि आप तो कह रहे हैं आज की सावरकर को भारत रत्न मिलना चाहिए, तो एक तरफ आप कुछ कहते हैं और राहुल गांधी कुछ और ही कह देते हैं।
बात ऐसी है कि ये सिर्फ संजय राउत नहीं बोल रहा है, आज उद्धव ठाकरे जी ने भी यही बात कही है। राहुल गांधी अपनी बात को लेकर अड़े हैं और शिवसेना की एक विचारधारा है जो सावरकर जी के विचारधारा के साथ जुड़ी है। राहुल गांधी जी ने जो बात कही है सावरकर जी के बारे में, हम उनसे सहमत नहीं है और हमने स्पष्ट रूप से कह दिया है।
आप कहते हैं आप राहुल गांधी की बात से सहमत नहीं है, लेकिन वो आपके सहयोगी है। क्या कहीं ना कहीं जिस तरह से ये महाराष्ट्र में एक बार फिर सावरकर का मुद्दा उठता है, कहीं ना कहीं ये क्या एम्बैरेसमेंट हो जाता है? एक बीजेपी को एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलता है कि ये जो अलायंस है इसमें मतभेद है, एक दिन आदित्य ठाकरे भारत जोड़ो यात्रा से जुड़ जाते हैं और दूसरी तरफ हम देखते हैं कि कुछ ना कुछ ऐसी चीजें हैं जिसमें आपकी और उनकी विचारधारा मिलती नहीं है। इसके लिए एम्बैरेसमेंट है या नहीं?
एम्बारसमेंट सिर्फ शिवसेना को नहीं है, महाराष्ट्र के हर पॉलिटिकल पार्टी को है। कांग्रेस को भी हो गई आज एम्बारसमेंट, एनसीपी को हो गई है। देखिए, महाराष्ट्र के लिए नहीं तो देश के लिए, महाराष्ट्र तो ज्यादा ऊपर देखता हूं मैं, वीर सावरकर हमेशा एक रिस्पेक्टेबल और श्रद्धा का स्थान वीर सावरकर जी को महाराष्ट्र में रहा है। और जैसे हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी बार बार नेहरू जी को पकड़ कर बैठे हैं, वैसे राहुल जी हमारे सावरकर जी को पकड़ कर बैठे हैं। अब क्या करें, लेकिन हमने जब ये सरकार बनाई थी महाविकास आघाड़ी की, और हम पहली बार जब दिल्ली में आए थे, मुख्यमंत्री उद्धव ठाकरे जी थे, आदित्य जी थे, मैं भी उनके साथ था, और सोनिया गांधी जी के पास हम गए थे चाय के लिए। सोनिया जी ने हमें आमंत्रित किया था, हम भी गए थे, और हमने बहुत ही विनम्रता से कहा था कि ये सरकार जो बनी है, ये सरकार कॉमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राम के ऊपर बनी है। रोटी, कपड़ा, मकान, शिक्षा, एजुकेशन, हेल्थ, उसमें से आपका जो बार बार मुद्दा आता है, वीर सावरकर जैसे मुद्दे नहीं आने चाहिए। हमारी राय बहुत ही अलग है और हम वीर सावरकर को एक क्रांतिवीर मानते हैं, क्रांति पुरुष मानते हैं, और हमेशा हमारे दिल में उनके लिए जगह रहेगी।
लेकिन सर, ये तो कॉमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राम जब आप सरकार में थे, महाविकास आघाड़ी की सरकार थी, वो तो ठीक था। अब आप विपक्ष में हैं, जब आप विपक्ष में हैं, एक साथ इलेक्शन लड़ने की बात होती है, बीएमसी का इलेक्शन आता है, क्या आपको लगता है कि आप वाकई लड़ पाएंगे? क्या राहुल गांधी की कांग्रेस और उद्धव ठाकरे की शिवसेना इन मतभेदों के बावजूद एकजुट होकर चुनाव लड़ पाएगी, या ये सब धीरे धीरे आप लोग डिवाइड होते रहेंगे?
विपक्ष में भी कॉमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राम में हम काम कर सकते हैं। ऐसा नहीं कि ये सिर्फ सरकार के लिए ही कॉमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राम बनता है। एक जब फ्रंट बनता है, एक आघाड़ी बनती है, तो उसमें भी कॉमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राम होता है। लेकिन हमारे कॉमन मिनिमम प्रोग्राम में इस प्रकार के जो मुद्दे हैं, विचारधारा वाले मुद्दे हैं, ये अगर अवॉइड करे हमारी साथी तो अच्छा रहेगा। देखो, महाराष्ट्र में राहुल गांधी की भारत जोड़ो यात्रा को सबसे ज्यादा समर्थन मिला है। पूरा महाराष्ट्र का माहौल बदल गया भारत जोड़ो यात्रा से। तो सावरकर जी का मुद्दा लाने की जरूरत नहीं थी, जिससे आज एक हमारे जो बीजेपी हो या और कोई लोग हैं, उनको एक अलग मुद्दा मिला है सड़क पर रास्ते पे उतरने का।
मैं आखिरी सवाल आपसे पूछूंगा, संजय राउत जी, क्या आप समझते हैं इन सब चीजों के बावजूद, जो भी राहुल गांधी की भावना है सावरकर के बारे में, क्या वाकई आपको लगता है 2024 का जो चुनाव आएगा 2024 शिवसेना, एनसीपी, कांग्रेस एक साथ लड़ पाएंगे? क्या इस बयानबाजी की वजह से चुनाव भी लड़ना आपके लिए मुश्किल होगा? विल यू फाइट इलेक्शंस टुगेदर?
देखिए, हम कोशिश तो बहुत कर रहे हैं और कोशिश करेंगे भी, लेकिन इस प्रकार के मुद्दे अगर सामने आते हैं जो शिवसेना के विचारधारा के साथ सीधे जुड़े हैं, तो मुझे लगता है कि उसमें थोड़ी एक कड़वाहट आती है दोनों के मन में। आज महाराष्ट्र में कांग्रेस पार्टी के लिए भी ये बहुत बड़ी समस्या बन गई कि जब सावरकर के ऊपर ये बात आ गई। महाराष्ट्र ने हमेशा सावरकर जी का आदर और रिस्पेक्ट किया है, इसलिए तो हम बार बार बोल रहे हैं, 10 साल से मैं बोल रहा हूं, जब से मोदी जी की सरकार आई है, कि वीर सावरकर जी को भारत रत्न देना चाहिए। सिर्फ सावरकर जी के नाम की जपमाला लेकर आप बैठे हो, तो जो हिंदू हृदय सम्राट वीर सावरकर और बाला साहब ठाकरे, उनको आप भारत रत्न दीजिए और अपना जो प्यार है वो सच में लाइए।
चलिए संजय राउत जी, you're calling for a Bharat Ratna for Veer Savarkar and Bal Thackeray, and there Rahul Gandhi says Savarkar is responsible for dividing this country. Appreciate though you're joining us there on our top political story of the day. Let's turn to our other focus tonight, because this is a story that in a way is going to create more and more convulsions. In the last few days, the world has been stunned to see big tech companies like Meta and Twitter sacking employees in large numbers. Today, another addition to the list, Amazon, planning to lay off thousands of employees across the world. According to reports, the company could fire as many as 10,000 employees starting as soon as this week. And if the total number of layoffs stays around that, it would be the biggest ever in the history of the e-commerce giant. Amazon's layoffs come, as I said, even as other tech companies, including Twitter, Snap, Microsoft, already enforcing job cuts, and many others are announcing a slowdown in hiring. In India itself, Byju's also, among others, is resorting to layoffs. Let's go straight across to our guest tonight. Prabir Jha is of Prabir Jha Advisory. He's one of India's leading HR experts. N.S. Rajan, former group CHRO, Tata's, and former global leader of people and organization at EY. Appreciate your joining us. Mr. Rajan, let me come to you. Since you've looked at the tech sector carefully over the years, are you surprised at this sudden layoffs that are taking place in global companies in India, startups that have been otherwise very successful like Byju's? Does it surprise you?
You know, Rajdeep, it's rather tragic. We know of crisis that hits companies and how people handle it. But today, I think the problem is somewhere else. You know, when you look at, on one hand, you see startups, on the other hand, you see technology companies and others. At one end, you are actually chasing valuation and then ending up eroding values. On the other end, you're chasing market cap and quarterly results, and you're losing human capital in the bargain. I think the writing was on the wall, because when you actually end up into indeterminate hiring, with a lot of desire to be able to seize the future in a hurry, you will end up actually doing indiscriminate firing at the end of it. So it is tragic for sure.
Prabir Jha, is it simply because these companies did not anticipate the nature of the slowdown? Is this an obvious consequence of the last few years, COVID, the Ukraine war, a global slowdown, UK today saying they're moving into recession? Or is there something specific to the tech industry in particular which tried to expand too soon in many cases?
So Rajdeep, both of them are true. I think when good times come, companies can get very bizarre in their manpower planning, staffing, and hiring. They do not visualize that the winter could set in sometime, which it has, and there are recessionary pressures across. So response to a business reality is something I won't grudge the companies for, because they need to kind of risk mitigate their near-term quarters. But I think your other part of your question is actually the most scary one. I personally think it again reveals deep fault lines in the way companies are looking at human capital. I think they do not visualize enough what are the long-term consequences to their brand, to their talent attractiveness, to the culture, to issues of trust. And good times will come back. And this yo-yo of firing and hiring is something which is going to actually create problems for many, many of these marquee companies. And I think the leadership of these companies must reflect, must be prudent. And what is even more dangerous is that even closer home in India, many of the marquee companies which were startups and have gained traction the last some quarters are actually behaving likewise to the big players. And that is something which in the Indian societal context, which does not have adequate social security support, is going to be a very dangerous sign for employees in general and for the reputation of these companies.
So, Mr. Rajan, are you saying, I mean, what would your advice be to these companies, both in India as well as abroad? Many of them have large presences in India. Do they need to sort of step back and look at the benefits of human capital as they move into future phases of expansion? Do they need to recognize what they are doing to thousands of lives at the moment? Need to step back and recognize the importance of human capital, not just quarter-to-quarter numbers?
So Rajdeep, in the near term, if I do not know what the details financially are for each of these companies, but one is an immediate near-term response and one is a more longitudinal response. In the near term, I guess they are trying to make sure that their expenses are reined in and people costs in these companies are a significant part of their spend. So I think that's where they are tightening the belts. And I have always said this, letting go of people almost appears in every company as the immediate silver bullet response. It is unfortunate, but I've seen it in my entire career that people love to look at talent exits and therefore save costs. So one is a longitudinal business model response in terms of, do you need to have regular employees? Will the future of work allow for more categories of people, including gigs and, the famous moonlighting debate can come back to this. So there is an opportunity of redoing the entire manpower staffing of these companies. But in the near term, I think I would expect to see a lot more of fairness and humaneness. So layoffs may be a brutal reality. It may have its business compulsions, but the way you do it will possibly speak a lot more about the true character and nature of these companies and the so-called big culture arguments that were talked about them. So to do it sensitively, to make sure that they support these exiting employees with potential re-employment, which I don't think is going to be very easy in the near term. The severance being a little more generous, and the ability to make sure they still retain trust and connect with those who are staying back. Because once the trust levels are broken, it could have a very dangerous dominoes effect as well.
Mr. Rajan, you want to respond, particularly in the Indian context? Do you see Indian IT companies being relatively insulated from what we are seeing globally?
No, I don't think so. In my mind, there are three aspects. There is a when, there is a who, and how you do it. Now, the reality is that COVID has been one of the reasons where business actually boomed, and people were trying to seize the opportunity there. They were indiscriminately hiring left, right, and center, and reaching a point of proportion where there is no going back. Now, as much as the issue is a live issue, I think there are 2-3 dimensions that we need to be careful of and cognizant of. One is the fact that when is a layoff justified? In my mind, layoff is justified if there is a proven moral turpitude, or if there is a non-performance which is beyond redemption, or you're talking of people who have brazen sense of entitlement and to go against the norms of the company. But it's definitely not right or fair if a person is a performer who's contributing, compliant, and committed just because of business exigencies. And there is a larger impact it has on reputation at one end and the kind of relationship you have with employees and culture. Reputation, for instance, it takes years to earn it, but it takes minutes to lose. I mean, you're talking of relationship. The whole dimension comes to, is it just a transactional relationship, or is it something where you're trying to build an enduring strength and foundation of the enterprise? And today, when we're talking of culture, you also have the issue that just because somebody has not been laid off and is still inside the company, doesn't make him feel any safer.
But Mr. Rajan, this is the you know, in the United States, you spoke about culture. Layoffs have been perhaps far more frequent. They are seen as part of what you sign up for. In India, that's not the case. And now a younger generation, even some 25, 27-year-olds suddenly find themselves being laid off. How difficult is it to make that adjustment, Mr. Rajan?
I would agree with you. Culturally, they have been very different. And let me take a special case, but especially when, in the onset of COVID, I know of organizations, Indian organizations, where the senior leadership took accountability. There are people who actually sacrificed their own compensations, their variable pay, and said, if that can save costs at one end, it will also help me reduce the prospect of layoff study, if it's possible, even delayed.
Right.
So I think we have had a far more human approach in the way we've handled it. But then, when you're talking of leadership, there are 2-3 elements that you have to bear in mind. As much as you're answerable to stakeholders, the leader is responsible for the performance of the enterprise. And typically there are 2 levers, right? You reduce costs and, enhance incomes.
Right.
Now, reducing cost and people are the lowest hanging fruit. So traditionally across the world, this has been a trend. But I think in India, there has been a tendency to actually ape. So in startup world, a lot of people, when we look at practices outside in the world, we tend to actually imitate what is not good and rarely practice what is good out there.
Let me leave you on that thought. I wish we had more time, and we will in the days ahead. This is not an issue that's going away in the weeks and months ahead, but 2 fine voices joining me and explaining what exactly these layoffs really mean. Mr. Rajan, Prabir Jha, appreciate your joining me here on the news today. Let's take a break. On the other side, we'll bring you our Get Real India story and our good news story. Today it comes from Haryana's Khudana. You're watching the news today. News without the noise.
Armed with facts, she takes the news by its horns.
You think the future of these students are not hampered?
Fierce, bold and direct, setting the tone for the biggest stories. From every corner and every angle. Expect nothing but the unfiltered truth.
News first, niceties later. Watch me, Nabila Jamal, on India Today.
Welcome back. Tonight's Get Real India story comes from the campaign trail in Gujarat, where the residents of a village near Rajkot, a semi-urban village, have decided to boycott voting this election season. More than 20 societies' residents are struggling for something as basic as drinking water. Our ground report today is from the water-scarce Saurashtra region of Gujarat. Milan.
Women in Rajkot urban village, Mota Mawa, are angry. Facing crippling water crunch, depending on water tankers, they have decided to shun voting. Houses here sport posters banning entry of netas from all political parties. 3.5 years after the area came under the Rajkot civic body, piped water connection eludes residents of this so-called green city. While the Gujarat government ensured Narmada water in many villages in Pach Saurashtra, taps here remain dry.
500 મીટર છે આમ રાજકોટ થી અમારું ગામ તો પણ સુવિધા મળતી નથી. નર્મદા પાણી ગામમાં ઘરે ઘરે આવી ગયા છે, અમારી ઘરે હજુ આવ્યું નથી.
हमें यहाँ जब तक पानी की पूरी सुविधा नहीं मिलेगी तब तक वोट या कोई भी यहाँ वोट मांगने आए मत.
पहला बोल रहे थे टैक्स भरो, टैक्स भरने के बाद में वेरा भर रहे हैं, तो वेरा भरने के बाद कुछ तो बेनिफिट मिलना चाहिए.
The Narmada water sadly has been brought to many villages of Saurashtra, but this village, hardly a few kilometers in Rajkot, still does not have a tap water connection.
The tanker water doesn't come cheap and is a burden for residents who shell out house and corporation tax while being deprived of basic amenities.
हम यहाँ टैक्स पूरा भरते हैं, हाउस टैक्स भरते हैं, वाटर टैक्स भरते हैं, स्ट्रीट लाइट टैक्स भरते हैं और रोड टैक्स भरते हैं, लेकिन उनमें से कोई भी सुविधा हमें मिल नहीं रही है.
साहिब के पास गए, आरएमसी गए, सब जगह हम गए. उन्होंने बोला कि हो जाएगा, टाइम लगेगा थोड़ा, पर अब 4 साल से हम टैक्स भर रहे हैं, तो अभी और कितना टाइम लगेगा.
The locality cuts a sorry picture with garbage-strewn roads and non-functional streetlights, despite being part of a sprawling city. Both the erstwhile BJP MLA and current candidate pledge they will address the drinking water problem.
हम कल उसके पास जाना है,
कल जाएंगे
और उसको समझाएंगे और दोनों भी उसका से तो दोनों को प्रश्न भी हल करेंगे और उसको खातरी देंगे અને એ લોકો અમારી સાથે ભારતીય जनता पार्टी के साथ रहेंगे.
मोटा मावा गांव के लोग आप लोगों से थोड़े निराश हैं कि वो कह रहे हैं कि हमको पानी नहीं आया, सड़क नहीं बनी. आप एक न्यू कैंडिडेट उनके सामने जा रहे हैं, आप उनका गुस्सा कैसे शांत करेंगे? आपके पास कोई स्ट्रैटेजी है?
वहाँ बात हो गई है और उनका जो प्रश्न है वो जल्दी से जल्दी हल हो जाएगा. वहाँ हमारी बात हो गई.
Will Mota Mawa see an end to its perennial problem?
यहाँ हमने बोर्ड लगा दिया है, किसी राजकीय पार्टी और कोई कैंडिडेट को यहाँ वोट मांगने के लिए आने नहीं है, हम उसका बॉयकॉट करते हैं.
Citizens here, at least in 25 societies, more than 20,000 voters have decided to boycott the election process because they have not been provided any facility from their previous votes that they gave to the MLA in this particular area. And this paints a very grim picture for the development model, even in cities near Rajkot, which are supposed to be one of the 4th largest cities of the state of Gujarat. With Pradeep Gupta from Rajkot Rural, Milan Sharma for India Today.
Let's turn from there to our good news today story, which comes from Haryana. A 21-year-old has become the youngest sarpanch in a village there. Anju is confident of taking up all the responsibilities that await her. Our good news today story.
Age is just a number. A 21-year-old Anju from Haryana's Khudana village is here to prove it. A medical student and now the youngest sarpanch. She set a benchmark for many. Fixing all the problems from water shortage to potholed roads, it has all fallen to her tiny shoulders.
सबने मुझे आशीर्वाद दिया और काम के गांव का काम सौंपा, जैसे बिजली पानी की समस्या, रोड वगैरह की समस्या, शिक्षा की समस्या और सभी इस समस्याएं मैं दूर करूंगी।
The village has scripted history by handing over the reins of the village to a young woman. As soon as the news broke out of her becoming the sarpanch, the whole village sparkled with joy. She has not only made her father proud, but also the people of her village.
इसने पूरे गांव ने हमें बेटी को आशीर्वाद दिया है और हमारे गांव में भाईचारा बहुत अच्छा बरकरार है। आज आप गांव की दिशा देख रहे हो, 1 साल बाद जरूर आना, फिर गांव को देखने को अच्छा लगेगा।
कोई भी सिटी डेवलप करते हैं, जैसे कोई गांव उसको डेवलप करते हैं तो उसका पब्लिक का पार्टिसिपेशन होना बहुत जरूरी है। सभी ने बहुत संघर्ष से सब ने एकजुट होकर इस बात को दिखाया है कि हम सब एक हैं और हमने बहुत ही अच्छी अचीवमेंट हासिल करके बहन को अच्छी वोटों से जीत प्राप्त की।
Women of the village have high hopes from Sarpanch Anju, which she vows she'll deliver. Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, that's it on the show. Up next is Gaurav Sawant. I leave you though with our reminder that elections on our plate is back. Gujarat next week is where we will be traveling. So the election special that you look forward to will be back next Friday. Back in my Janmabhoomi of Gujarat. Bye for now. Stay well. Stay safe. Good night. Shubh Prapti. Jai Hind. Namaskar.
It's getting cold. Tiger, गरम चाय पिला दे, कड़क चाय।
लवले, खाने में क्या है?
मट्ठी, पैर, बिस्कुट।
पापड़ा है कि नहीं? पापड़ा नहीं मिलता है? जलेबी? ढोकला? No jalebi, no fafda, no dhokla. It's time to head to the land of fafda. Elections on my plate.
मंडी के 4 घंटे के रास्ते को अपनी योद्धा 3 घंटे में पूरा कर लेगी। चल आजा, तुझे घुमा के लाता हूँ।
टाटा योद्धा 2.0, जहाँ जमीन है वहाँ रास्ते हैं।